This week, Graincorp bought a German malting business for €58 million to complete its global portfolio of malting factories. Now, a year ago, when CEO Alison Watkins took over, that would have translated into $84 million. Today, it's $75 million, which is the silver lining of the rising exchange rate. The deal is also a continuation of the company's diversification away from its traditional base in grain handling, which started with the big purchase of United Malt Holdings 2 years ago. I spoke to Graincorp's chief, Alison Watkins, about her plans to transform one of the last big listed agricultural players left in Australia. Alison Watkins, you announced the bid for AWB basically the moment you arrived at Graincorp as CEO. So obviously the plan was cooked up before you got there. And now a year later, you've taken over a German malting business. Now it feels like a change of strategy. AWB, grain handling and marketing. Malting is grain processing. So is that right? Is it a change of strategy?
Well, no, Alan. Actually, I was very involved in the AWB acquisition and the decision to make that offer for AWB. And it was a little bit disappointing that it didn't end up going ahead, but we really focused on three main businesses. So our handling business, our marketing business, and our downstream businesses, of which malt is one of the most important. So AWB wasn't to be. I think it was a very good outcome for the AWB shareholders that Agrium came along. We've actually been able to make great progress organically on building our marketing business in particular, but also our handling business. And now with this acquisition, we're really strengthening our malt business. So I think it's always a combination of organic investment and acquisitive investment, and it depends what's right for the time. In
fact, there aren't many opportunities to grow by acquisition in grain handling anymore, are there?
In handling, we're in an extremely strong position in Australia, and I think we're very, very comfortable with the position that we've got, and it's really for us about making the most of that and also making sure that our network is as efficient as it possibly can, so we can serve end user consumers of grain, both offshore and onshore, as cost effectively as possible, as well as the exporter customers who rely on our network. So no, we're very, very comfortable with our handling assets. The AWB combination would have been a nice to have, but certainly not a must have.
Now with malting, I can see how the food industry around the world is growing. There's lots of opportunities and revenue growth there. But malting is attached to the beer industry. It supplies beer, which is in gradual decline around the world. So explain why malting isn't in decline along with beer.
Yeah, well look, malt's all about taking barley and converting it into malt, and we sell it to brewers and also to whiskey distillers. So there are a number of markets for malt. And it's true to say that the consumption of beer over the last couple of years, and I think particularly influenced by the GFC, has declined in mature markets. So the developed economies, the consumption of beer has definitely dropped off. We actually expect that that will improve as those economies recover. And also, look, we're seeing some terrific growth in the developing markets. So some of the Asian markets, the South American markets, the African markets are growing very strongly. And then the other big trend that we're seeing is a great focus on quality rather than quantity in beer, which is probably not a bad thing. So the challenge for us is to make sure that we've got a very good footprint in malt, which the German malt acquisition now gives us, so we can serve the big global brewers and really aggressively target the growth sectors, so the export markets, and German malt is very well placed, for example, into Africa, and continue to serve these growing craft premium brewers very well.
In fact, I've been told that the African brewers and emerging country brewers generally aren't that interested in the malt that you produce. They're more interested in cut price malt, is that right?
Look, there are different brewers who will use different qualities of malt, that's certainly true, and different approaches even to making beer that we're seeing in different countries. But I think there's always good demand for good quality malt, and we're able to cater to a range of different qualities in any event. I think it's all about really being close to those customers, those brewer customers, and really being able to respond to their requirements and to be adaptable.
So your total profit looks like being about $150 million, 2/3 of which is grain handling and marketing and $50 million is grain processing. What's the balance of your business likely to be going forward?
Our businesses vary quite a lot across the cycle, and I think I've been very fortunate in my first year to come along and have a bumper East Coast harvest. And that's certainly driven very strong grain handling and grain marketing earnings for us this year. It's very true. And as we've already discussed, the malt industry has been a little bit soft because of the demand situation in beer. We know that those things will vary across the cycle. So, while sitting here today, I'm hopeful we'll have another good harvest here on the east coast of Australia. It's really in the hands of the gods, and the weather conditions that we experience over the next couple of months will be critical there. I expect, based on the kind of rationalisation that we're starting to see happen in the malt industry, that our malt margins and volumes will improve steadily over the coming years. So the mix will vary from year to year, but look, roughly speaking, we've got half of our assets offshore now, so I expect we'll be getting earnings commensurate with that.
And how do you see the outlook for the grain business in general and farming?
The long-term fundamentals, I think, are undoubtedly strong. I think that the challenge is for us as a country to make sure that we create the conditions that allow Australian farmers and participants in the whole supply chain like us to really make the most of the competitive advantage that we have as a country. Sometimes it feels like we're not doing that to the extent that we could. So, we're particularly keen to see continued investment in critical infrastructure, to see investment going into the research that will support greater yields in our industry and other industries, and I guess to make sure that we don't keep adding to the regulatory burden. And while certainly we support the concept of pricing carbon, we are concerned about the framework that's on the table now and the impact that will have on growers' costs, because while there may not be direct impact as such, certainly there'll be a lot of indirect impact flowing through from energy increases, farm input costs. Operators like us will incur significant costs, and those do all end up, unfortunately, back with the farmer, and ultimately the farmers are price takers because they operate in world markets, and so there's no doubt that it will have an adverse impact on farmers. And farming is a tough enough business as it is. Farmers have seen a steady decline in their terms of trade over many years now. So I think it's unfortunate that we're adding more cost into it for our farmers.
And the other thing, of course, is the high Australian dollar. How much of an impact is that having?
Yeah, look, all else being equal, we'd love to have high commodity prices and a low dollar, but it doesn't usually work that way. And I think we have had pretty good, strong commodity prices over the last sort of 8-9 months or so, and the fundamentals do support strong commodity prices going forward, though of course there'll be many bumps in the road along the way. So I think we all have to learn to live with this high exchange rate, and for farmers, as long as the commodity price continues to be strong, that does offset to quite an extent the impact of the high dollar.
Thanks very much, Alison Watkins.
Thanks very much, Alan.